Moin Moin and welcome to Ralfs Foto-Bude. A few weeks ago Sony presented their mirrorless cameras Alpha 7 and Alpha 7R, and now Sony comes with a brand new bridge camera, the RX10. It has a 20 megapixel sensor, 8x zoom from 24 to 200 millimeter, and one very important thing is they have a size lens as the most good Sony cameras, and the aperture is 2.8, and 2.8 goes over the complete focal length from 24 to 200 millimeter. So this makes the camera real good for low light situations, and the sensor is quite bigger than usually in bridge cameras. The sensor size of this one is 32 by 8.8 millimeter. Give you a guess, the Fuji X-S1, also a very good bridge camera, their sensor is half size, so they have a sensor 8.8 millimeters by 6.6 millimeter. So this big sensor hopefully gives the RX10 a real good low light ability. So yes, my tests will show this. But before I go to my test, I will show you the camera, the main functions of the camera, because they have some real nice features which I like very much. First of all, we have a monitor which you can tilt up and down, and unfortunately it's still not a touchscreen. I don't know why Sony don't put a touchscreen in their cameras. You know, the Alpha 7 and the RX100, also the high-end cameras in their class, they also don't have touchscreens. I personally like touchscreens very much because the focusing is very easy. You have the touch focusing and you have some functions which are very good in focusing method. So I don't know, Sony doesn't do this. I would like to see in this camera also a touchscreen, also in the Alpha 7 and 7R. So next very important point, we have this real good viewfinder. That's the electronic viewfinder, and I think it's the same like we have in the Alpha, because it has a real high resolution, it's crystal clear, it's very sharp. So yes, that's a real good electronic viewfinder we have here. So let's have a look to the buttons and dials of the camera. First of all, at the front side we have a lever where you can change the different focus methods from single, continuous to DMF and manual focusing. DMF, that's an in-between between autofocus and manual focusing, because if you use DMF you can push the button, the shutter release button a little bit, so the camera makes autofocus, and then after this you can go manual focusing on the point, so it's a little bit easier than only manual focusing. Let's have a look on the top of the camera. On top of the camera we have, first of all, we have the program dial. You may know other Sony cameras. So this is the usual program dial, PASM, 2 custom options, 1 and 2, the video option, then the panorama and the scene mode, and the intelligent automatic, where the camera makes all the settings by herself, so you don't have to care about ISO, aperture, shutter speed or something like this. The camera makes everything by her own. Next point, we have a large display on top of the camera. That's one thing I like very much, because you have in a short view you see everything. You see the most important camera settings. I like this one very much. It's like the better DSLR cameras. They also have this second display on top of the camera. Here we have the on-off switch, and now we switch the camera on, and we have the zoom lever here, and you can see how far the lens comes out if we use the 200 millimeter. So it's a quite big thing. The lens is really big because you have the aperture of 2.8, so you have to have a real big lens on this camera. I think still it's handy, but it's not quite compact. So you have cameras which are a little bit more compact. You don't have the aperture there. You have a little bit like the like 2.8 to 3.5 or less. But I think it's worth to have a lens with a real good aperture, because then you have the opportunity to work also in low light situations without going with the ISO too high. And the next point, you can work very good with the depth of field, and this is real good in this camera because you have the bigger sensor, so it's worth to have a bigger lens with a good aperture, so you can work real good with a low depth of field. Okay, next point on top of the camera, we have the custom button or function button, and then we have the correction dial. On the back side of the camera we have, I showed you before, the LCD screen. Here we have the menu button, we have the rec button for the movie, then we have a dial here, then we have auto exposure lock, the function button here, we have a dial and button. And this point, replay and trash. You see there are not so many buttons and dials on the camera. So in my personal opinion, it's also good for beginners, which don't because they don't like so many buttons, because they get confused if you have too many buttons and dials on a camera. So this is a real good thing, and I like this one very, very much. You can change the aperture by the ring on the lens. You don't have to go in the menus, or you don't have a dial or something like this. You have here this one, so you can change the aperture very fast. This is real perfect to work. So if you work in manual mode, let's see what happens if we go here to manual mode. So you change the aperture here, this one, and you change the shutter speed on the dial on the back side. So that's very easy, and also beginners will deal with this very good. You have a shortest shutter speed of 1/3200th of a second, and you can go up to, I think, 30 seconds, I'm not quite sure, 30 or 60 seconds. On the other side, here we are, 30 seconds, and for sure you have the bulb function. And to use the bulb function, you have here where you can put a cable remote in to use the bulb function. One important thing, you have this dial here also. You have the dial for the aperture, and you have a second dial here, and you can program this dial. In the normal function, if you're in the automatic, in the autofocus mode, you can zoom with the ring, so you you're not only able to zoom with this lever here on the shutter release button, but you can also zoom with this ring. And one very nice feature, you can program this ring. On the one way, you can program it that the zoom goes continuously, and on the other way you can program it that you have steps. I show you what this means. So if you work with the lever on the shutter release button, you see you can go very smooth each millimeter focal length, and if you work on the front dial, on the lens, you have the steps. When I turn this, you see I have 24mm, next step is 35mm, 50mm, 70mm, 100mm, 135, and then 200mm. So you don't have to turn the ring all the way, it's just enough to tick a little bit against the ring, and you have the next focal length downwards or upwards. So that's a real nice feature. If you're in manual mode, I go now to manual focus mode, turn the lever here. If you go to manual focus mode, you turn the front dial, and you see we go in the manual focus mode, and what you see also is we have the focus peaking. This one is the red focus peaking, and we have the 8x magnification, and you will see you have here the area, and you can move the area downwards. So if you want to go to my logo, just go here. Here's my logo, and then you can turn the dial and focus very perfect and very precise on the point. You have the focus peaking. You can change the color and intensity of the focus peaking, so that's real nice. You have an 8.6 magnification. I think that's enough. You can't change between different magnification sizes. You only have the 8.6 magnification. So that's very easy to deal with. Manual focusing, autofocus. You have the continuous autofocus for shooting objects which are moving. So you have the different settings, and that's very easy. Next point here on the back side, that's what I want to show you also, is the display button. I go back to the autofocus mode. If you go to the display button, you can switch between different displays on the back side, and for sure you have the 3D level meter. That's very, very comfortable, and you have the 3D level meter also in the viewfinder. To change between the LCD screen and the viewfinder, you have the automatic. You have these two sensors here, and if you put your eye in front of the sensor, it automatically changes between the LCD screen and the electronic viewfinder. We have the custom or function button here on top of the camera. If you press this one, I don't know what I have programmed. I have ISO setting programmed on this. Just press the button and then turn the dial, and you can change the ISO setting. You see we go from 80 up to 12,800. That's the ISO setting of the camera. Next function button, and that's one function button, I think that's the most important or very interesting one, is this one, because if you press this one, it's like a quick menu. You have two rows here where you can change 6 different values of the camera. So we start here with the drive mode, flash mode, flash compensation, then you have the focus area, ISO setting, and so on. But that's not fixed. Just go to the menu, and that gives me a good reason to show you the menu. Just press the menu button here, and we go back to the first point. And here we have the, just give me a second where it is. We have the setting of the, no, it's in the setup menu. Here we have the display button, what I showed you before, the display button for the monitor, where you can set the different things you want to see on the display by pressing the display button twice or again and again and again, so it changes between the different settings you have chosen here. So let's go to cancel. You can do it also for the viewfinder, that's exactly the same. On the viewfinder, there's only one thing you won't see in the viewfinder, that's the overview of all the camera settings. But again, you can change between the electronic viewfinder and the display just by move your eye away, and so that you will see this one also on the display. So let's go back. I wanted to show you how the function button works. So I have to press the menu button again to come back in the menu button. Here what I said before is peaking level and peaking color for the manual focusing, and zoom setting. Here is a zoom setting, what I also said before, optical zoom, and you can say how the function menu set is. So you have the function settings on the upper row, 6 different settings, and you have the functions on the lower row, also 6 different settings. And there you can set up the menu in the way you like it. So if you don't like the picture effect on point number 5 on the lower, you want something else there, just go here and look what you want. Maybe you want the smile face detection there, or you want to change to the softkin effect or something else, or you want to change the image size. Just press this one and you have the image size on the position lower 5, and I show you how this will work. Here we are, and you have the image size here, 20 megapixel. So if you go to this point, you can just turn the dial here and you have the different, no, you have to press OK, and then you can turn the dial here and you have the different settings, 5, 10 or 20 megapixel. So that's the way how the function button works. You can make the settings by yourself for all these 12 positions and customize your quick menu in the way you want it. So that's very nice and very easy to customize your camera. So let's go back to the menu and give you a short overview over the menu. So here we start with the image size, what I said before, 20, 10 or 5 megapixel. You can change aspect ratio, you guess it, we have 3x2s, 4:3, 16:9 and 1:1. Quality, yes, we have the, sorry for that, my finger is too fast today. RAW and JPEG, and we have the 3 different JPEG values, extra fine and standard. Next point in the menu is the file format for video. We have AVCHD and MP4. You can change between this. And if you work in the NTSC format, you have the highest resolution, full HD 60p, so 60 full frames per second and 28 megabits per second. So that's the highest possible resolution. And yes, we don't have 4K on this camera. Some people hope that the new cameras will have 4K because Sony presented the 4K monitors or 4K TVs last year in Germany on the Berlin Fair and now on the CES too. And so some of the photographers or video filmers hoped that the new cameras will have 4K, but no, they don't have 4K. It's still only full HD 1920 by 1080. You have the drive modes, the different drive modes with continuous shooting, spot priority continuous. They have the self timer 10 seconds or 2 seconds. Then we have the self timer 10 seconds 3 image or 10 second 5 image, and we have the different bracketing options here. Going back to the menu, you have the flash mode, flash compensation, red eye reduction, focus area. The focus area, we have the different settings. We have the white setting, then we have the center setting, and we have 3 different flexible spot settings. We can go from the large spot to the medium spot and the small spot, and this looks like this. You have the area here where you can go with your 4-way button to the point where you want to have the autofocus. Here we are, just press the OK button, and now when I press the shutter release, the camera focuses exactly on the point where my spot, my autofocus spot sits. That's one feature I would love to have with a touchscreen, because it's not complicated, but it takes a little bit to move the focus point on the screen. It would be much easier just to touch with your finger on the point where you want to have the focus point. But as I said, unfortunately, Sony don't do touchscreens. Then we have the AF illuminator, ISO setting, that what I said before, 12,800 down to 80 ISO. And yeah, very nice, we have a built-in ND filter, and you can change between auto ND, or you can move the filter individually on and off. Yeah, that's a thing I like very much, because for long exposures on daylight, for if you want to take a long exposure of oceans or something like that, springs or stuff like that, you need the ND filter, and it's very nice if you have a built-in ND filter and don't need to screw the ND filters on the lens. Then we have the different metering modes, from multimeter to center and spot metering, so that's not very unusual. Next point is white balance. Here also we have different settings. We have different presets of the white balance, and we have the individual setting of the Kelvin value, so that's also possible to set the Kelvin value. Then we have DRO and HDR settings, dynamic range optimization and HDR picture, creative style. Here again we have the different settings of the creative, of the color of the picture. It goes from standard, vivid, neutral, portrait and so on, black and white. So these are the different settings of the color settings of the picture. And on top we have different picture effects, like toy camera, pop color, the different posterizations, retro style, and so on and so on. You have a lot of to do. My favorite, by the way, is high contrast mono. I like this one very much. Yeah, and here we have the different settings of the picture effect. I think there are enough effects you can choose from. Next point, long exposure noise reduction, high ISO noise reduction, smile face detection, softkin. What else do we have here? Then we have steady shot. Yes, we have steady shot. That's the built-in stabilizer of the camera. We can set it for photo and for video. Then we have the color space, sRGB or Adobe RGB. Audio recording. So these are the usual settings of the manual. So there's nothing special, and so we can have a quick look on the setup menu. We have the manual focus assist. That's what I showed you before. You just turn the dial in manual focusing, the front dial, and you just get the magnification, focus magnification time. You can set 5 or 2 seconds, grid lines, audio level display, auto review, display button. That's what I showed you before. You can change between the different settings for the monitor and the viewfinder, peaking level and color. If you don't like red, just use white, no problem at all. Exposure set guide, live view display, pre-AF. So you have here the zoom setting. If you want only the optical zoom, then you set it to only optical zoom, and that's what I said before. Change between finder and monitor just by the sensor. Put the camera on auto, and so the camera will change directly between the control monitor and the electronic viewfinder. Exposure compensation set. You want it to ambient and flash, or only to ambient. Bracketing order, face registration if you want. You see custom key settings, zoom function on the ring. That's what I showed you before. It's set on step. If you don't want to set it on step, just go on standard, and if you're on standard, show you what happens. Then you're on the zoom ring in front of the camera, and if you turn it, you can do it millimeter wise and very precise, change the focal length. So that's the difference between steps and standard. The movie button, if you want the movie button only working if you turn the top dial on movie, then you have here to say only step, and that's it. Next point is the Wi-Fi functions. We have different Wi-Fi functions here. I don't show you now the different Wi-Fi functions because all the Sony cameras has not exactly but almost the same Wi-Fi functions, so I want to explain it in an extra video, only the Wi-Fi functions, that makes this video a little bit shorter. You have the replay with different options, and then we have the main menu. We have the monitor brightness, viewfinder brightness and stuff like that, the language, time and so on and so on. And also here we have the very important, we have the PAL NTSC selector, and that's very important to set this one to NTSC, because if we set this one to NTSC, you will have the 60p in video mode. If you set it to PAL, the European television system, you only have a 50p in the video mode. So please set it to NTSC, because all new and modern flat screens can work with NTSC, so that's absolutely no problem to set it to NTSC. And if you set it, you have the higher rate of 60p instead of 50p, so that's very important to know. USB connection, language, date, what I said before, format, and that's it. So the menu of the RX10 is like the menu of the Alpha or of the DSLR or SLT cameras, and not the menu of the NEX. I prefer this one because this one is easier to understand, it's easier to work with this menu, because it's a little bit more straight than the next menu. In my opinion, the next menu is not really good, because you don't know where to find a certain point if you want to change a setting in the camera. In my opinion, it's a little bit too difficult, especially for beginners. So I like this menu much more, because it's easier to understand, it's linear, it's absolutely clear, you will find everything, I think, directly. Yes, what I said before, on top of the camera you have the shutter speed, you have the aperture and the pictures you can take, you have the mode single or continuous shooting, so you have the important informations on top of the camera, and that's very good, because sometimes it's good to set the camera only to the viewfinder, so not to change automatically, but to set it on the viewfinder. And so it's very nice, you can have a short look on top of the display, on the top display, and see what the settings are, and then go shooting. You will see all the settings in the viewfinder, but it's nice to see this before, because it helps me a little bit to work faster and to see, oh, I have this one, and then I can shoot. Sometimes when I use the electronic viewfinder, I use only the screen, no information, no histogram, no level meter, nothing. I only want to see the complete scene without any information, and therefore that's really good that I have the information here on top of the camera. And what I said before, you have the dial here for the aperture. That's also a feature I like very much. Yeah, these are the most important functions. On the side I can show you also which connectors here we have. We have a headphone and microphone and USB, and we have the HDMI, and on the other side we have the SD card slot. There's one SD card slot, and as you can see here we have the chip to connect it with smartphones. So that's very easy. If you have a smartphone with the NFC chip, just hold it on there, put the NFC chip here on, and the cameras will connect. You don't have to put in any Wi-Fi passwords or something like that. Just hold the smartphone here on the NFC chip, and that's it. They will connect together. Very easy. Yeah, one of the most important points, and that will show my test in the next day, is how is the picture quality? Is the sensor, the bigger sensor, real good, or real as good as I hope so? And that's what I will find out in the next day. Yeah, one thing I should show you also is the flash. It's a real small flash, so you should not expect too much light from this one, but you have the flash shoe, and it's not only a flash shoe, it's an accessory shoe. You see, you have these small contacts there on the back side of the flash shoe, so you can use different stuff from Sony, lights, and any accessory stuff from Sony, which you can put here on top of the camera. And one real nice feature is you can light up the display, the top display, just by pressing the button here. What I would love to have is, if you press the button, you not only light up the top display, but you also light up the different buttons. So if you work at night, you can see the different buttons a little bit glowing. I would love this because always when I'm out at night shooting, I press buttons and buttons and buttons and don't know which one is what. So I would love to see a camera where the buttons are also lighted up when I press the button on top of the camera to light up the top panel. But unfortunately, no, Sony didn't do that. Yes, what I said before, here we have the exposure correction dial, so that works very fast and very easy. Yeah, give a little look to the different scene modes. Here we have P-program mode, aperture, shutter speed and manual. Then we have the two different individual settings, and then we go to the movie setting where you have the different settings you see here. Here we have the microphone in level, we have the ISO setting and stuff like that. So yes, we have different settings of the camera. You can change the ISO mode just by pressing here, and then we go up like to 3200. You can change the aperture for sure, just turn the dial, or you can't. I'm not quite sure. I didn't try this. It's the camera is very new for me because I've got it 2 days before. For 2 days, no, you can't change. You can't actually change the aperture, and unfortunately, I think you also can't change the shutter speed. No, you can't work manual in the video mode. In the video mode, the camera sets aperture and shutter speed automatically, so you don't have the change to work with manual mode. Program auto, and yes, that's it. So there's no way to change the aperture and shutter speed in movie mode. Okay, so that's. I would suggest that that the camera makes or gives you the option to change the settings manually, but now Sony don't do that. Okay, one thing I've learned just by trying the camera. Next point is the is a panorama mode. Again, always the same, just move the camera and that's it. So this is the function to make a panorama, a real nice panorama. You have different panorama settings. So if you go to the menu, you see here we have the panorama size. You see here the we have the panorama size. You can change between standard and wide, and you have the different directions from right, left, up and down. Okay, so this is the panorama mode, and then we have the different scene programs you can change. I think you should change, yeah, you see it's very easy, just turn here and you will see sunset, moon and so on. You have the different settings of the scene modes. Here we are. So just turn the dial and you change between the different scene modes. Yes, and the last setting is what I said before, is auto, where you don't have to do anything intelligent. Auto, you see, it changed now to macro. If I go a little bit back, you will see the camera will change to, hopefully, try this one. Usually it should change to portrait. Yeah, here the camera recognizes the face, and then it go to the portrait mode. Macro again, and a little bit further away. It should work now with macro. No, I thought it would change to portrait mode, but I don't know. I have to try this one also in the next few days. Yeah, so these are the main functions of the Sony RX10, a real nice camera, a real nice bridge camera. hopefully with a good picture quality, because it's a little bit expensive, so I expect real good picture quality, because if you compare this one to a mirrorless camera, it's not cheaper than a mirrorless camera. You also can buy a mirrorless with like the Sony Nex with a good lens, and you have a bigger sensor than this one. Not as much focal length, because you won't find a 24 to 200 millimeter lens as cheap as the combination Nex 6 and lens like this one. So if you buy the Nex 6 and two zoom lenses, you are more expensive than the RX10. But it's not a real cheap camera, so I expect a real good picture quality. One thing, the design of the camera is real nice. I have big hands, so I can hold the camera very firm and steady. The surface is very nice. You have a real good grip on the camera. So this one is absolutely perfect. There's nothing to complain. I will show you that you have an imagination of the size of the camera. I will show you 3 different cameras you may know to compare the size. Here we have the Lumix GX7. So you see the Lumix with a micro four thirds sensor has quite the same size. The RX is a little bit higher because they have the viewfinder on top of the camera. Next camera to compare, that's a real, not small one, but it's still a smaller one. That's the Fuji X20. This one has less zoom, no tilt monitor, optical viewfinder, so that's another class. And one very interesting camera, I made the video some days ago. You may see this one because this is a real nice camera, is the Stylus One. And the Stylus One has also a real good lens, because if you see, the camera has aperture of 2.0. So this is a real nice camera, and it has more zoom. It's at a 10 times zoom from 28 to 300 millimeter. But the sensor is a little bit smaller than the one of the Sony. It's 7.3 millimeter by 5.5 millimeter compared to the Sony 13.2 by 8.8 millimeter. This one is also a real nice camera with a 10 times zoom. And compared, it's a little bit smaller. Also has an electronic viewfinder, tilt monitor, touchscreen. Here, this one. So it's hard stuff that the RX10 will make the race between the different cameras which are on the market now. And they have a tough standing if the picture quality is not really outstanding. So that's one thing I will check in the next 2 days. And we can compare it with a real big one. I have to remove the lens, because otherwise you won't see the difference in size. That's the comparison of a Canon 70D, and there you will see the 70D is a little bit bigger, a little bit higher and wider than the RX10. Okay, so let's see it from the side. There's not so much difference in the thickness of both cameras. This one is a little bit higher, and for sure it's more heavy if you use a real good lens on the 70D. Yeah, so this was my my not review. No, it's not a review because I don't know the picture quality, but the presentation of the RX10. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you get a little bit idea of what the RX10 is and which options the RX10 gives you, and I'm very interested in to see how the picture quality is. As I said, I will do it in the next few days, so go on my Flickr account please, and there you will see test pictures in different ISO settings of the RX10, so you can compare this with other cameras. It's very easy to compare it on my Flickr account. So thank you for watching me. Come back again on my YouTube channel. I will show you some more videos also on the RX10. Next week I will get back the Alpha 7, and there I will make some tips and tricks to the Alpha 7, to the menu settings and stuff like this. Both menus are the same, so also the tips and tricks of the 7 and 7R you can use also for the RX10, or most of the tips and tricks you can use for the RX10. Thanks for watching me, hope you enjoyed it a little bit. Come back again. Until now I say take some nice pictures and moin moin.